Okay, here we've got an interesting problem. Cosine 2 theta plus 3 equals 5 cosine theta. So first thing that I would do is I would move this over with this other stuff over here. So we'll make this cosine 2 theta plus 3 minus 5 cosine theta equals 0. Okay. Now this right here, if you look on your formula sheet, cosine 2 theta, that's cosine squared theta minus sine squared theta. And we'll just copy the rest of this down here. Okay, so now I've got all these cosines here with this one weird sine squared here. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this, and remember that we're going to use the sine squared plus cosine squared equals 1. So that means, with a little bit of algebra, that means that minus sine squared is actually minus 1 minus cosine squared. Okay, now we've got all this whole thing into cosines. We can distribute the minus sign in here. And now we can simplify this. So I got a cosine squared and a cosine squared. That's 2 cosine squareds. Let's put the minus 5 cosine next. And then I've got a negative 1 plus 3. That's going to be plus 2 equals 0. Okay, this is much, much simpler now. Now we can go ahead and factor this. Again, if you prefer, change the cosines into x's, and then just factor the quadratic. So this is going to be 2 cosine theta here, and we'll just have a regular old cosine theta right there. I need to make 5, so I'm going to put the 2 over here and the 1 right here. So now I get 4 cosine and 1 cosine. We'll make them both negative. So that makes negative 4 cosine minus a cosine is minus 5 cosine. A negative times a negative is a positive. And so there we've factored this successfully. And now this is pretty easy to solve. So I know that 2 cosine theta minus 1 equals 0. And I know that cosine theta minus 2 equals 0. Okay, so this one, 2 cosine theta is equal to 1 when I add 1 to both sides. And I divide by 2. And so I get cosine theta is 1/2. And then I'm going to arc cosine both sides. And I end up with pi over 3 and 5 pi over 3 from this problem. I don't have to worry about any additional solutions from this one because there was no period change here. And we're staying within the 0 to 2 pi range for this one. So now this one over here, I'm going to add 2 to both sides, and I get cosine theta equals 2. Now, it should be a red flag right there for you because cosine is never 2. So this means that there's not going to be any solutions out of there. That's an extraneous solution because cosine can only be as high as 1. So I only have 2 answers to this one, pi over 3 and 5 pi over 3. And we're done with that problem. Thanks.